Thanks for watching this portion of Garage Logic today on our YouTube channel, and hit the subscribe button if you wouldn't mind. And also thanks to our friends at Everest Men's Health for sponsoring this. Go to everestmenshealth.com today to see if they can help you with better energy and better health. And catch the Garage Logic podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
About it.
Now for the most disturbing story of the week, if not the month, if not the year, if not the decade.
All right.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has taken the unprecedented step of invoking the Emergencies Act to crack down on anti-vaccine mandate protests. Mr. Trudeau said the scope of the measures would be time-limited, reasonable, and proportionate, and would not see the military involved. You know what he's going to do?
I do.
With no need for court orders, banks can freeze personal accounts of anyone linked with the protests. Hundreds of demonstrators remain in Canada's capital city. On Sunday, law enforcement cleared anti-mandate protesters at the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor, a critical pathway for Canada-U.S. trade, after a week-long stalemate. What began as a rally against a new rule that all truckers must be vaccinated to cross the U.S.-Canada border or quarantine upon return has grown into a broader challenge to all COVID health restrictions. This is about keeping Canadians safe, protecting people's jobs.
No, it's not.
Trudeau told a news conference Monday. He said the police would be given more tools to imprison or fine protesters and protect critical infrastructure. Mr. Trudeau told reporters this is from the BBC. Mr. Trudeau told reporters the legislation would be applied temporarily and in a highly specific manner. Critics have noted that the Prime Minister voiced support for farmers in India who blocked major highways to New Delhi for a year in 2021.
Oh, interesting.
Saying at the time, Canada will always be there to defend the rights of peaceful protests.
Wow.
Mr. Trudeau's invoking the Emergencies Act come as demonstrations across Canada enter their third week. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland said Monday that banks would be able to freeze personal accounts of anyone linked with the protest without any need for a court order. Vehicle insurance of anyone involved with the demonstrations can also be suspended, she said. Ms. Freeland said they were broadening Canada's terrorist financing rules to cover cryptocurrencies and crowdfunding platforms as part of the effort. It's all about following the money, she said. She almost said that happily. She spoke after hackers released the details of what they said were 93,000 donations for the truckers, totaling $8.4 million to the crowdfunding platform Give, Send, Go. The Emergencies Act, passed in 1988, requires a high legal bar to be involved. It may only be used as an urgent and critical situation that seriously endangers the lives, health, or safety of Canadians. Lawful protests do not qualify. Speaking Monday, Canada's Justice Minister David Lametti argued these conditions had been met. But the Canadian Civil Liberties Association disagreed, warning that the move threatens our democracy and our civil liberties. Of course it does. Ottawa protest leader Tamara Lich dismissed Mr. Trudeau's move, telling AP News there are no threats that will frighten us. We will hold the line. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, a Conservative, said he supported the federal government. But the premiers of Quebec, Manitoba, Alberta, and Saskatchewan said the emergency powers were not needed in their regions. Before Mr. Trudeau's announcement, Quebec Premier François Legault said invoking the Emergencies Act could throw oil on the fire. Under growing pressure to bring the disruptive protest to an end, be it from the White House or increasingly frustrated Canadians, Prime Minister Trudeau has entered uncharted territory with the decision to invoke the never-before-used 1988 Emergencies Act. The powers announced by Mr. Trudeau go into effect immediately, but his government has to present it to the House of Commons and the Senate within a week and needs a green light or the proclamation would be revoked. All main Canadian federal political party leaders said it's time for the protests, which have had an impact on supply chains, the national economy, and the country's relations with the U.S., to end. But they are not all necessarily on board with Trudeau's unprecedented move. Conservative leader Candice Bergen voiced concern it could influence the situation. This is astounding, and here's why. So far, these guys have been essentially peaceful.
100%. Well, not 100%.
So you
for the
begin
most
to
part.
ask yourself the questions. For what other reason might they decide to freeze personal bank accounts? For what other reason, if you're going to hide behind the rubric of terrorism, for what other reason might a government decide to freeze bank accounts?
So, were you clear on who does the ordering of the freezing?
It sounds like Trudeau, but then it has to go through the
Individual banks.
House of Commons in the Parliament. And I suppose once the order is established, if in fact it does get established, then the banks would have to be compliant with the federal government's order. And so John Smith, who owns a big rig, they'll freeze his account and he can't get money to put food on his family.
Or the, $1,000 it takes to fill up his fuel tanks.
For what other reasons what if they decide that if you own a gun, you prevent the threat of terrorism, we're freezing your bank account?
Right.
What if you write an incendiary letter to the editor of the Toronto Star? We're going to freeze your bank account. What? I know I'm being...
No, you're not.
I'm not being far-fetched.
No, you're not, because what did the United States government want? Anybody with over $600, we just want to keep an eye on what you're doing.
I don't want you to keep an eye on what I'm doing.
No.
That's my business.
Exactly.
Mother of God, they're going to
Tell
freeze
me
your
what this has
bank
to do.
account?
Tell me what this has to do with public health.
Because they're hiding behind they're trying to sell the idea that these truckers present a terroristic threat.
And they don't.
Well, they don't.
No.
Why didn't you again, I told you, Trudeau has two options. One, capitulate to the truckers and say, thank you for your service, and I hope you stay healthy. Let's get going here. But he keeps doubling and doubling. He's now tripled down with this, freezing bank accounts. He's tripled down.
Oh, reminds me of Walz and Ellison.
Mm-hmm. This is an amazing development in a free Western world.
Well, that's the other part. He could have removed this all could have gone away if he had just simply removed the mandates. This would be over.
Meanwhile, that's exactly what's happening in the United States.
Right.
All over now. Everywhere.
In the United States, the mandates are being lifted, you mean?
Correct.
Yeah. This is astonishing.
How does he not see that?
And yet, I read about his support for Indian farmers last summer. Oh, he just couldn't wait to telecast his virtue to the world. We stand behind these farmers as a free country. We support them. Well, you're a liar, pal. He's being called Fidel Castro's son.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So from what I understand, if you're a Canadian citizen, you vote for members of the House of Parliament, and then they appoint the supreme leader.
That's what he's sounding like, a supreme
Isn't
leader.
he? Yeah.
So what if the government doesn't like the content of your podcast? We're already seeing it.
Well, we're seeing that here.
You're seeing it.
Because the government did encourage what's his company?
Spotify.
Yeah, to
And true. And
their
Joe
thumb
Rogan
down.
has a hell of a lot bigger bank account than I do to worry about.
What were we going to say, Johnny?
I'm still unsure of how this works because I keep reading all the different things. Yesterday, I know the bankers got together because they don't know what they're supposed to do.
Right.
The bankers in Canada. I don't think it sounds to me like the banks can do what they want, but you would assume they'd go along with the government.
Or would
That's
they?
the way I keep reading it. I don't know. And they apparently there were a bunch of meetings of leaders of banks all over Canada.
Because don't you
yesterday.
think if one bank said, we're not doing that, everyone would move their money to that particular
a
branch?
form of that is already happening in the United States. A lot of people might not be aware, but and it's with oil exploration
Right.
and oil drilling,
Right.
and these companies can't get, what are they, guaranteed bank loans or
Right.
government guaranteed loans? I'm sorry, I don't know. But it really played out last year, I believe, in Alaska.
Well, there's something called an ESG, environmental, social, and governance, and you would have a score, apparently. And depending on the score, which the government would grade, that would determine if you're a viable candidate for insurance or banking. The world the mystery is upon us. It's changing faster than we can keep track of it. It's now unfolding in Canada faster than we ever imagined. And what it sounds like is a young, dear leader who is so full of himself, He's blustering and blustering and blustering and say, "You won't obey me. I'm going to freeze your bank account."
And Kenny alluded to this a while ago.
Bleep you, Trudeau.
But the way that these truckers and those that are supporting these truckers are being portrayed, that's almost just as harmful. Because all they're standing up for is freedom. And people have a problem with that.
It's happening in both countries.
I don't, the COVID itself is becomes tiresome, but Johnny Heidel have to help me. Haven't we been in COVID protocols long enough now to learn a few facts that would mitigate the truckers' protest? They are no more or less likely to get COVID now than anybody else. Even if you have the mandated vaccine, we've learned that you can still transmit COVID or suffer from it yourself. The benefit being that the percentages are in your favor that you would not die. You would get sick, but you would not die.
Yeah,
so
not as severely, yep.
haven't we reached a point where this is all? What's the word I want? This is all
Window dressing?
Yeah, it's continuing to foster this window dressing of the likes of Trudeau being in control.
Yeah.
Well, let it go, Justin. Let it go.
But that's the problem, Joe. There's too many people, both Trudeau and people in this country, that aren't willing to. They don't want to let it go.
What are Canada's numbers like? They can't be that bad, right? I'm assuming.
You don't have that many people in America's hat.
By the way, Crenshaw had the best tweet yesterday regarding this.
Truckers come down here and
Quick
work.
note to Canadian truckers being fired and now targeted as terrorists by your woke government. USA has a trucker shortage and a work visa program. Here's the link. Come on down. We'll take you.
Holy mackerel. I've never thought I'd see anything like this. You're going to freeze a trucker's bank account because the trucker is enforcing his God-given rights.
You know, it's
Listen to this text from Weinstein yesterday. For 2 years, tyranny has ridden on a wave of COVID. That pretext is no longer viable nor necessary. Tyranny is now forging ahead under its own power. If you're still preoccupied with COVID, it's time to shift focus. The far is more dangerous.
That's Brett Weinstein,
Yep, and he nailed it.
who was a college professor who came under fire for not towing the failed academy line and left the academy.
A self-described liberal that now is being accused of being far right, and he is anything but far right.
Oh, he's a great thinker, though.
Yeah.
And he's on that show with his wife. What's the name of the show? Horse Latitudes? Wild Horses?
what the hell are you talking
Oh, it's horse something, isn't it?
Hold on.
Do horses get songs stuck in their head?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
It's called Horse,
No, it's not horse.
Wild Horses. Couldn't Bring Me Down.
Wild horses.
Do you think horses get songs stuck in their heads?
I do think so.
What is the name of their podcast? Why can't I remember it?
Band of Horses.
He does it with
love
his
the
wife,
Band of
Heather
Horses.
High.
Like that band.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a good band.
I don't know. You'll find. Oh, the Evolutionary Lens.
That's it?
Or no, Dark Horse Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
Joe is
was
right.
right.
See?
Good
Yep,
Lord.
Joe
It
is
had horse
correct.
in it.
Dark
Yes,
Horse.
it did.
Dark Horse.
Wow. Can we cut that part out, Reavers?
Oh, God, no.
No,
embarrassing.
that's in
Very
Joe's old favor there.
I actually have their opening theme, too.
That's how it starts.
Yeah. Take it away, Brett.
Well, hello, Wilbur.
How do we buy that as a TV show, by the way? They put peanut butter in his jaw.
Are you
and-
kidding me? We bought a talking car.
Good point.